Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Marriage Culture TV, where marriage and culture intersect. I'm your host, Queen Athleen, and my friend and co host,
It's Nikki O. Welcome, everyone.
Nikki O. So today is episode 2, and we are going to talk about a topic in which we kind of ended with last week, and that was with communication. Where we talked about what were some of the drawbacks that we each had considering going into an intercultural marriage. And Nikki brought up a very hot topic, which was that of communication. So since it's her topic, I will let her take the lead on this. Miss Nikki
Yes,
Communication.
again, welcome, everyone. And we just wanted to say thank you to
Yeah,
all who subscribed and thank you for all the comments. We do not take any of those comments lightly.
thank you.
And this is even why we're talking about communication today. So we kind of did a little homework and, just wanted to make sure we're on the same page. And a simple definition that we came up with in regards to communication is that it's one of the ways of receiving or sending information. And if you are a communicator, you know that sometimes not everything that you're trying to say is understood that way. Sometimes there are little humps and bumps in the way we're trying to communicate. And that's where we get the miscommunication from. And then with this miscommunication, you can look at it two different areas,
Hmm.
or whether it's one that causes a conflict or it's a confrontation. And of course, I had to do my homework again because Athleen didn't do hers.
I like
So
Chantel.
conflict, conflict is just serious disagreement, and being incompatible on certain areas. And then confrontation is where there's a hostile or an argumentative meeting between opposing parties.
Yeah.
And when we started this topic, it was something that my husband and I were talking about, and I was like, you know what? We're gonna be talking about communication, and there's always confrontation and communication. He was like, babe, there should never be any confrontation and
Yeah.
communication. And we were tending to agree, disagree, agree not to disagree on it. And I think I misused the word. I wasn't really talking about confrontation per se, not necessarily, but having some conflicts. Having
Hmm.
conflicts in a relationship doesn't mean that, hey, the world has come to an end, or
Hmm.
you're not communicating with a person. It just means that there's something that's happening at that time, the topic, whatever it is, and you're not agreeing on it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's such a bad thing. So I'm going to let Athleen go back in and just give us her example of, and I think it's so funny, of where that miscommunication came about and how she dealt with it.
Well, a typical example, but first, let me give a little preamble. Usually, when people see my name, they already know that okay. Their first question is, "Oh, are you Nigerian?" And I would say, "No, I'm not. My husband is." But I'm Jamaican, and they're like, "Whoa, you're Jamaican, he's Nigerian. How does that work?" It works because, as the famous saying goes, a marriage is unique. It's like a fingerprint. There no two are alike. So we make it work within our communication. However, along this wonderful journey called marriage in an intercultural environment, we have learned so much from each other, my husband and I. And, some of you can relate, even being from the
Yes,
same culture.
definitely.
One of the things I remember my husband one day, he was like, oh, he was like scratching his back, like, oh, I have an itch here. I wonder, if I'm allergic to something or something irritated me, I'm itching. Why is my skin itching this way? So he's like scratching. And in typical Jamaican form, how our response was, and I said it at that time in Jamaica. If he was Jamaican, I would say, your sin I bite you. But I said to him in translation, oh, your sins are biting you. Oh, and I'm laughing. That was not funny to him. That did not go over well. He was like, what do you mean my sins are biting me? You're calling me a sinner? You're condemning me? What do you mean my sins are biting? So I had to explain what that phrase meant and when we use it and how we use it. And,
Right.
it took like detailed explanation of my culture and where that came from for him to fully understand. So of course, the next time I was scratching, he couldn't wait to use it. Your sins are biting you. But at least that there was an understanding from that. And I know Nikki too had a few little warnings with either phrases or
Yeah.
instances.
like a typical phrase, like, or a word, like, Athlete could say something that you know, I might just, not be paying it any mind or thinking too much about it, and I go, Athlete, whatever. I mean, that's a whole nother word in my household. You know, it doesn't come off like that.
It's
So I've
banned.
learned. Yeah,
It's a
I'm
banned
sorry.
word. Is
Huh?
it banned? It's banned.
It's a very negative word. So now it's banned from Nicola's mouth, with the whatever. And then another thing, you could ask me a question, and because I'm not sure or I haven't decided on what the answer is, I might go,
Mm-hmm.
hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, let me not even dare use that either, because I need to explain myself. So, because just shrugging my shoulders or saying that can, depending on what the conversation is about, can be taken either way. So now I learn how, like I tell my nephews and nieces, that you need to use your voice, you need to use your words when you're communicating. I now have to also do that. I can't just shrug or just say little things. I have to use my words and talk about things, and use my voice when I need to communicate, not like be silent or anything like that. I have to use my words, when I'm communicating.
Right.
And just going back to another example in the, in the environment with just greeting, like Kathleen was saying, I used to go to another church that I'm not in right now, and we were having a big event. Most of the major players were around, and one of the founding fathers came in, and part of their
This is good.
greeting was that you had to prostrate, which means that you go down on the floor and you lay there until you are given the go ahead to get up. And of course, being a young chick, not understanding that I was not married at the time, but it was not a part of my culture. And
Yeah,
like I said, where we come from, we don't do them thing there. You understand? We keep it real. So everyone just went down, and I was the only one standing up with papers in my hand waiting. And then, after he spoke and gave his blessing and said, hey, it's okay for you to come up, everyone did. And then, I was introduced to him and I shook his hand. It was a major blowout in that denomination. It was like, how can the person that you have as your secretary not know that she needs to get down and bow when this man of God came in the room? But it was not a part of my culture. It was typically something that was not explained to me. It was not something that I was used to doing. So outsiders looking in might be thinking that was rude, but me at that point in time did not really understand what that meant for them in their culture,
Yeah.
and why they thought it was necessary. But looking back at it now, it's a joking thing. When it happened, it wasn't a joking thing at all, at all. I'm gonna let Athleen
No,
just kind of go
I,
ahead.
I didn't want you to finish because you left something out. I think what
What's
is
that?
important to note was it was other people that were around, those that prostrated and laid flat on the floor that were offended. The man himself, whose hand you
Was
shook.
not offended. Yeah, he
Exactly.
understood that there are cultural differences, but the people that were around him, thank you, Anthony, for bringing that up. The people that were around him were the ones that were more offended than he was, and thought that something should be done about it. And that's one of the things too that comes about with miscommunication or communication. Simple things can just be thrown out of proportion.
Yeah.
And that's what happened that brings about the conflict, simple little things. And if you do have a conflict in a relationship or in an argument or something that you're communicating about, it doesn't mean that, it's the end of the world or it has to be taken out of proportion for any reason. So before we go, and I know we have a lot of things that we could say, we just wanted to drop some golden nuggets that we have come to realize, in regards to dealing with intercultural marriages or even intercultural relationships. And I let Ashley take it over from here because I'm kind of short of breath.
You're saying a nugget with regard to communication?
Yeah,
To give a
or
nugget?
just communicating. Yeah.
Well, I think this comes with maturity and also just learning, with communicating with my husband and even with his culture, is that what has helped me is to seek first to understand. Seek
Yeah.
first to understand, and before you take an offense that, oh, this body language meant that, this phrase or this phrase meant this, because I'm interpreting it according to my cultural norms, and that may not be the case. And it's even biblical. James 1:9 says, be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to
Yeah.
get angry. So, in a nutshell, seek first to understand, and then your communication will go smoothly.
Yeah. And like hubby said, we were talking about this, and he was like, um, babe, don't forget that, when you do have conflicts or something that's going on, you shouldn't be the person in the relationship that wants to jump into starting something. You have people that loves the idea of trying to prove that they are right, or the other person is wrong. He says that you should never be um, a fuel for the fire. Always try to be the fire extinguisher with whatever the situation or
Wow.
circumstance is. A simple miscommunication or a simple um, disagreement could turn into something big just by doing that, fueling a fire that just needed to be extinguished for no apparent reason. And another thing that I wanted to say is also that don't view little conflicts in a relationship as bad. It's two different people coming together, two different worlds that are trying to make
Yeah.
sure that it works. So something that you might think was very important, after you sit down and you talk about it with your spouse, or with us, you're in the relationship with you, and I found out that it's not as important as you thought it was,
Right.
knowing that you're both trying to make this work for you. I don't know if Athleen has anything else that she wanted to say.
No, not at all. And we pretty much come to the end of today's webisode. And I want to thank you again for tuning in. I want to thank you for joining, for subscribing, for sharing, for supporting. And I pretty much have nothing else. Let's see.
Okay.
Let me see.
So, in closing out, I just wanted to say that, God has given us wisdom. He's
Yes.
given you this relationship that you should always commit to set the things right between both of you. Never just leave the door open or leave anything that you have disagreed on, just leave it hanging in the air. Make sure you find time to sit down and have that communication that you need to have, and always try to stay away from words like you always, you
Mm-hmm.
always,
Yes.
or you never,
Mm-hmm.
or I feel like, I feel. Just remember that these are not things you want to bring up. They bring up a whole nother can of worms
They're
that you just don't
negative.
want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and too negative, as Kathleen said. And we just want to say, thank you again. We're going to end today's session. We just want to say thank you for tuning in. We love you. We want you to be a part of our family. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Always like our videos, because trust me, they're good. Always like our videos. And like we say in Jamaica, make sure it's gonna walk good. Again, see you later.
Bye.
Bye.